Hello and welcome. My name is Madeline Longoria Garcia, and these are our other stories. Today on the podcast, we have Jennifer joining us for a wonderful conversation. Jennifer is from Anakbayan Portland. She's an organizer with Filipino youth and students throughout the Portland area and is a farmer at Precious Seedlings Farm, also located here in Portland. Thanks for joining and welcome.
Thank you. Hi.
First of all, I wanted to just ask how you are doing today, how you're feeling today, where are you at? Yeah.
Big question.
Yeah, I know.
Um, I'm doing fine. Um, there's a lot happening politically, both here in Portland and in the Philippines. So I'm gearing up for actually a retreat that we're having for my organization for this Saturday
Awesome.
and Sunday. So it's been a lot of busy preparing for this weekend, but
And
I'm
this
doing
is through
fine.
Anakbayan?
Yes. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Is that an annual thing that you all do a retreat for or?
Yeah, we do it, we try to do it in the beginning of every year just to set the tone of what we wanna achieve throughout, the year as an organization.
Yeah, cool. So I want to provide a little bit of backstory to folks who are listening. About how we know each other and yeah, how we kind of got reconnected here in Portland. You and I have now known each other for almost like 11 and a half years, almost 12
My
years, I think.
goodness.
Like, what year did you graduate from high school?
2015.
15. Okay. So and then we met in 2014. So it's been almost 12 years. Does that feel crazy? That feels crazy. Yeah.
Really feels crazy!
Yeah.
We were such
Yeah.
different people back then.
Yes. Oh, yes. I mean, so you were in your senior year of high school. I was in my early 20s, um, had just moved to Hawaii, and we were working in the same place. And um, I think I just told you this more recently, but I remember just being like, you were one of the most, you were the youngest person working there, and you were one of the most mature people working there.
Boy.
And and it was just like you were such a joy to work with, and yeah, you were just such a joy to work with, and it was just always nice to have you around and be like, "Oh my god, Jennifer's here today. It's gonna be great, and things are gonna
Thank
go
you.
smoothly, and it's gonna be fine."
Yeah, I hope
Um,
so.
and yeah, you left. It's funny, you left kind of around the same time that I left Hawaii for the first time. You were
Mm,
born and raised in Hawaii, you grew up there, um, but you left for college, right? You came to the Northwest for college. Um, I also, my university is in the Northwest too, and I feel like we would chat about that a little bit and like making that transition and the change to coming to the Northwest. And over the years, we've kind of like randomly stayed in touch. I remember one time when I was in Portland, we met up for coffee.
we
This
did.
was years ago too, though. I don't know if you were still in school or if you had recently graduated or something, but God, this was like 6 or 7 years ago
It
now.
was!
Yeah, it's like 7 years ago.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I mean, when I was coming back to Portland, you were one of the first people who I reached out to here to just be like, let's like catch up, let's chat. I want to know about all of this stuff you're doing. I've seen you posting about like all of this community work and like advocacy and activism work. And I'm so curious to learn about that and what's going on in Portland. And you were like, yes, let's hang out. I'm leaving for the Philippines in like 3 weeks.
Yeah, right?
And it was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, that was in July or June.
So I like moved to Portland in June. And then I think you left for the Philippines in, like, late July or something
Late
like that?
July,
I don't
yes.
remember. Yeah. And you're like, "I'm gonna be gone for a month." And it was just like, "Okay, what is going on?" Um, what is like, I'm just so curious about what I had been so curious about what you were doing, um, planning for this trip that you were going on, and I knew it was, like, this big deal, really, and I knew that there was something more to just to this trip to the Philippines. It wasn't, like, just going to the Philippines to go on a trip, to go on vacation. This was, like, you were going there for much more than that, and this is what I would love for you to share with folks because really what I want to explore with people in this season of Our Other Stories is like their work around community building, activism, advocacy, whether that's quite literally in their neighborhood and local community or something broader and bigger on a national or international level. And I feel like what you do touches on all of that. It has this like hyper local focus, but you all are connected to a national like body. And then there is this international connection with the work that you all do in the Philippines. And I'm so excited for you to share this work with folks. And I would love if you could maybe take us back to where did this start? I don't re like, and I don't and I ask this because I don't remember you being involved in this kind of work when you
Mm,
were, in Hawaii, and maybe that's wrong, right? Like, we only saw each other at work, but I'm curious, like, where did this start? What, obviously, there is this personal connection there through your ancestry, but, like, what is what was the thing that drove you to really get involved with this work? And yeah, can
hmm.
we start there maybe?
Yes, yes, we can. Um, so I moved here to Portland in 2015. I was 18 at the time. And then I was going through school, going through the motions of being a student. I studied art history and religion. But in the beginning of the senior year, in 2018, I started to learn more about my mom's migration story. She's a
Mm,
Filipino migrant woman who came to the US in 1996, just a year before I was born. And I started learning more about the conditions she had to go through in order to not just migrate here, but the reasons why she had to migrate. So, I knew at the time that the Philippines was a place that people wanted to leave for a better life.
mm,
So I kind of pried a little on my mom, but she got to share more about how lonely it was for her to actually be an overseas Filipino worker and the really extreme exploitation that she faced as a young worker, a young nanny in places like
mm,
Kuwait, and her choosing to follow through in a marriage that she didn't actually love
mhm,
her husband. Um, so all of that, like, sort of just came upon me as I'm like doing some identity searching and I'm about to graduate this like private liberal arts college or whatever.
mhm,
And as I'm hearing more about my mom's story, I became like very, very angry that, for one, my mom had to go through this, but also her story is not unique. Like, there are many
mhm,
other migrant women who have to go through the same loneliness, exploitation, sexual violence, workplace violence. Um, so that sort of like made the old Jennifer into like a more angry Jennifer. That really just wanted to do something about it because I got tired of just sitting in my dorm room writing papers about it.
yeah,
Because I knew that, yeah, not just other Filipino women, but other like migrant women in general are facing similar things. So That's when my friend, who was also a student at Lewis and Clark, he introduced me to Anakbayan Portland. So it came at a pretty good timing to be
Mhm,
like, wow, I'm like already learning about this, my own journey of identity, but then there's a larger group of Filipinos who want to fight for something better.
mhm,
Um, so I joined in 2018 in November. I joined as a member of Anakbayan Portland, and they were a pretty new organization. They launched actually in 2016. So I was joining something fairly new, and I didn't know many Filipinos here in Portland, but then I was introduced to this very large, very vibrant community of Filipinos and non-Filipinos who are fighting
mhm.
for something better. Um, so that's kind of the start.
Yeah, can I ask a couple of questions there? So
Yeah,
wait, your mom went to Kuwait first? Was that where she first went from the Philippines
she
as a
did.
nanny?
Yeah, when she was 18, she was there. And she doesn't share a lot about her experience
Mhm,
then, and I don't try to pry too much, but
mhm.
she was there and like just trying to find odd jobs for whatever she could because she's the oldest of 13 kids. Um, so she is the breadwinner of the family even today.
Yeah. Was she the first of all of the siblings to leave the Philippines?
Yeah.
Okay. And how did she end up in Hawaii?
My dad, my good
Okay.
old dad. Yeah. Yeah. They got married. And then I was actually born in Washington State in Bellingham. And
Okay.
then the three of us moved to Hawaii and, you know.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Wow, that's wild. Yeah. Um, what a different, wildly different world Kuwait would have been. My assumption, like that's my assumption from the Philippines and from Washington and Hawaii. Like, wow. And there's such a in Hawaii, there is such a strong Filipino community there too. And it is the part of that of the Filipino community I know is many of them came over and worked in agriculture or
Mm,
in healthcare
mhm.
or both. Actually, at this point, I know people who do both, right? Like they have a job as a nurse at a hospital and they, run a farm.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's interesting. I've never really had the opportunity to have a lot of conversations with them. And I think, kind of as you've hinted at, like there is obviously a lot of mm, like emotional trauma there of that movement. And so I don't think it's something that folks so readily offer up to talk about. But yeah, it's something that I've been thinking about a lot more ever since really starting this project of like, man, I've never even had this conversation with a lot of the folks I know in Hawaii, specifically from the Philippines, who ended up going to a lot of them I know went directly to Hawaii.
Mm,
And I know that that's a very, I don't know if I want to say common, but that there's a very strong like thread between of movement from the Philippines to Hawaii. Um, yeah. Okay. So you get introduced to Anakbayan in your senior year of college and kind of find this whole community of folks. I mean, I know, when I was in college in the Northwest, it was very like, yeah, where are like the brown people? Especially at my university. I mean, we share that in common, right? We both went to private liberal arts universities in the Pacific Northwest. It's a very specific environment and kind of like student demographic that is built into those
mhm.
spaces. And so I'm glad that you were able to find that. I didn't really have that for the Latino community when I was in college. I didn't really ever get connected to any sort of, identity group like that, but what were the things that you guys did? And, I mean, it was still so new at the time too. Was there already the national infrastructure that exists today, and Portland was just kind of like a new branch of this whole organization? Or yeah, what was the context there?
Yeah. Um, well, just to like start off even more to the beginning,
Yeah.
Anakbayan is actually based in the Philippines. So our main sort of like, I'm not going to say headquarters, but our main chapter is Anakbayan, Philippines. And we were launched in 1998 after a lot of like youth and student organizing already in Philippine history, particularly in the 1960s, there was a launch of an organization called Kabataan Makabayan, which means patriotic youth. And
Mm,
basically, these were youth and students who actually saw the need to not only organize in their universities and on their campuses, but actually go to the workers in the factories and go to the peasants in the countryside to learn about the issues that they were facing and actually take part in their fight for better conditions in their factories and um, their exploitative conditions in the countryside. So it wasn't until 1971 that Marcos Sr. at the time declared martial law in the Philippines, which
mhm,
basically meant that anyone who expresses dissent to the government was labeled as a terrorist, was being harassed, attacked, kidnapped, or even murdered for wanting something better than the dictatorship that was happening.
mhm.
So that basically led Kabataan Makabayan to go underground, and they're actually still very active today. But they are um, they still operate underground as an organization. So
Okay.
that gave birth to the need of an open, legal youth and student organization that fights for Filipino youth and students, but also allows us to integrate with the basic masses, the workers and peasants, to actually create genuine systematic change. So Anakbayan Philippines was founded and launched in 1998. And then Anakbayan USA, which is an overseas chapter, was launched, I believe, in 2011 or
Okay.
2001.
Mhm.
I'll have to double check.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, there's actually a national in the context of the Philippines, a national history of Anakbayan that became overseas in the U.S. That eventually became particular to Portland because there were a number of Filipino youth and students here locally who wanted to fight for change for our homeland. So basically, we have the analysis that Filipino Americans, but basically any Filipino overseas, is still very much part of the Philippine nation still, even though, like for myself, I was born in the US. I didn't even visit the Philippines until recently. I didn't know the language. I only learned certain things through my mom's practices of cooking and whatnot. But for us in our movement, we believe that people like me are still Filipino and that we
Mhm,
should still fight for a future where people like me, like youth like me, um, have the ability to go home to a Philippines that's um, not being strangled by the current rotten system.
mhm,
So that is why like Onakbayan exists overseas. And what was happening at the time of 2018 was, yeah, there was a growing movement of Filipino youth and students in Portland that wanted to do something about um, the current regime at the time was Rodrigo Duterte in 2018, and he is known under his presidency for thousands of extrajudicial killings under his
mhm,
so-called drug war, where basically he created a system of government that entirely militarized the country, that labeled, that justified killings of civilians for the sake of like having drugs. But That even worsened under 2020 when the pandemic hit, where he passed the anti-terror law, which basically labeled anyone who spoke out against the government as a terrorist.
Yeah.
Um, and he spent more money on militarizing the Philippine country than he did providing services for people under the pandemic. So that was sort of the political situation at the time when I first joined Anakbayan. So it was a lot of ramping up of campaigns around like, how are we as Filipino youth affected by what's happening in the Philippines and why should we care? It was a lot of, our US tax dollars is going to fund the military operations that are happening in the Philippines
Hmm.
because of the close history of US imperialism and semi colonies like the Philippines. Um,
Can you expand on that? Because that's something that I know people do not know, right? Unless they
mm,
are involved in this work or having these conversations or a part of these spaces. Because this is something that I really learned in August at that conference, the EMA conference,
yes,
right? And
yes.
that I knew a little bit of it, mostly again from you, and really didn't know or really understand the depth of things and the kind of like intertwining that exists until that conference, and I was blown away. So yeah, if you are able to maybe like share and summarize a little bit of what that relationship has been for decades at this point.
Yeah. Well, I won't. I could spend
I
hours
know you
talking
could go in.
about
I know, no,
it,
you could go into a lot of details, maybe just like the
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 gist.
general synopsis or like
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, for us as Anakbayan, for us as part of the national democratic movement in the Philippines, we understand that US imperialism is one of the three basic problems of the Philippines. In particular, the US has a history of, colonizing the Philippines, but also, you know, on paper saying that the Philippines is free through the Treaty of Paris in, I think, like 1896 or something. But in practice, we are actually not a free country because of the particular establishment of the Republic of the Philippines, which basically unfaced says like, oh, there's a Philippine president, you have your own system of government, you have your own laws, your own way of voting. But in practice, it's actually the US that is controlling the Philippine government that exists today in order to serve the US interests, which is
Mhm.
a majority like extraction of natural resources, because the Philippines is so rich. Um, and also like creating the conditions where Filipinos can't actually thrive and find a, sus- a livelihood where they can actually stay in our homeland. US imperialism actually creates conditions where Filipinos are forced to migrate to other places in the world in order for a better life to provide for their families. So that's one aspect, the government policies that the US influences onto the Philippines to create forced migration. But there's also the aspect of military bases being built in the Philippines. Um, but, on paper, it says like, oh, the US cannot build military bases in the Philippines, but they've created ways where it's like, it's a Philippine base, but the US just occupies it. um, and under like Marcos Jr., which is the current president today, he's actually built or is trying to build even more military bases in the Philippines,
Hmm.
um, which, one harms the environment, the ecosystem of the Philippines because of all of the military equipment and the weapons. But two, actually, instills even more presence of military in communities, indigenous communities, fisher folk communities, peasant farmer communities where they're already facing so many exploitative conditions, but the military actually heightens that even more. And also speaking, and also in addition to that, the U.S. military actually goes to the armed forces of the Philippines and does trainings for them on how,
Mhm.
uh, how to use the weapons that they actually
Yeah.
provide, how to, drive or not drive, fly the fighter jets that they, donate to the Philippine government. Um, and all of that is funded by our US tax dollars.
Yeah.
So I'll have to find the number for you on how much US tax dollars actually have gone to the Philippine government for military use, but it's in like the millions of
Yeah.
dollars that could really be going to our services here for healthcare, for education, for our
Just
food,
to name a few
just
things.
just the basic necessities of life.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and this is something that, like, a lot of people, unless they are seeking out this information, they don't realize that this is where so much of our own money, our tax dollars as individuals is going. This is what it's funding. This is why we don't have certain services in our nation, in the United States, to support the basics of life and the amount of money that is being spent on really, like, bolstering, and not just military presence, but many other things in multiple nations around the world. And yeah, it was something that it's like, I knew this was kind of going on in the Philippines, but it was really once I learned, yeah, the depth at which, and like how much it really is just like intertwined. I was like, this is wild and this is insane. And even kind of the seeing how the United States almost sees the Philippines, like you said, like resource extraction. And yes, resources of that nation, being rich in what it has in the land and everything, but it's like the people too as a resource. And how I know this is something that you do work around as well here in Portland, is like the exploitive work relationship, like human labor, basically, relationship that exists between these two nations. And like people, I mean, this is kind of your classic immigrant, migrant worker story, they feel powerless. They feel like they can't say something or stand up for themselves because they're not, a full on citizen. They have whatever tentative status in this nation and are taken advantage of by employers. And learning more about that through your work and in through this conference that we both attended, it, yeah, I was like, this is just a whole other, it's like an additional layer to what I already knew a little bit of, and now learning how deep this goes. And it's something that like I'm still shocked by when I
Hmm.
learn something new. And I just, yeah, I mean, I understand why you being who you are, like the way that you are, being presented this opportunity to get involved with a thing, to advocate for these folks, to also do education, because that is a huge part of what you all do too. Um, and bring this information to light, and put a spotlight on these circumstances and these systems that are really set up. And I understand, like, I get why you wanna be involved with that. It's like that's the same kind of stuff that I wanna be involved with, right? Um, I guess the question is, like, what keeps you going in this kind of work too? And I wanna talk in more detail about some of the stuff that you guys are doing and that you specifically have done. Um, But I'm curious what keeps you going? You've been doing this now for almost 8 years through this specific organization. You're like, every time I say how much time has passed, you're
Yeah.
like, "Oh my god."
It's true. It's true. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah. What keeps me going, I mean, it's very similar to the reflection you just shared, where this movement for the Philippines has really like opened my eyes to everything in the world. And it's to the point where I can't close my eyes anymore.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't unsee the the community that's actually building, relationships together, but also to like fight for collective action for something better.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
can't unsee how everything literally in the room that I'm in um, has been touched by a worker, has been,
Mhm.
created by human labor. I can't unsee like the relations of the struggles of the people of Palestine to the people of the Philippines to the people of Venezuela.
Yeah.
Um, like it can feel like bogged down. It can feel, like heavy to
Yeah.
actually realize all the connections. But I think it's even more empowering to uh, take all of that and actually move to action to do something about
Right.
it.
Yeah.
Because I mean, for us as youth and students, like a lot of our members are college students. There are even like high school students in different chapters where, their focus is on like doing well in school in order to graduate. But really, like, I had a member yesterday who's a student at a college, and she said, I went to the ICE facility yesterday to protest along with community members there. Um, and then I got tear gassed, and then I had to go home
Mhm.
and do homework.
Mm.
Like, it's just, it's in
Yeah.
this time where really like young people are seeing the failures of the system, the failures of our government. Um, and really want to do something about it, but then, they have to go home and do homework.
Right.
So
Right.
I think that drive, that kind of spirit is also what keeps me going of, if my eyes can be opened and I can no longer shut them, then there's so many other young people whose eyes can be opened too. Um, and that they can actually join an organization, build their own organizations to actually build more of that collective power for genuine change.
Yeah, I love that. And this is, I mean, as you were saying, sharing some of the things about giving the context of what has been going on in the Philippines since the 70s. Um, and it was like, whoa, this is being mirrored in the United States right now, right? Like folks who speak out,
Mm,
who are journalists right now, right? Great example, very recently, like journalists who are simply recording what is occurring being arrested out of their homes. And you're just like, what is happening? How? And, now hearing murmurs of people who are outspoken activists who are having their like TSA pre-check revoked or their global entry revoked, right? For no apparent reason. And one of the reasons that you can have that revoked is if you are under investigation by the government.
mhm.
And it's like the folks who this is who are experiencing this, or they're just like, that's the only thing that might be applied to me right now of all of the reasons why my global entry could be revoked. And it's this situation that it's like we have learned for years through the US education system of like, well, these are the terrible things that happen over there in these other countries. These are the terrible things that these other politicians have done. The United States is not like that. We are the land of the free, and recognizing now in the current state how so many of the systems in place to protect us are actually very fragile
Mm.
and have not been reinforced to be stronger and to like actually protect us as individuals. And the only it's like, well, why has nobody made these systems stronger? And this is where I kind of my mind starts to go, it's like, why hasn't that like when people have had the opportunity to do so, why have they not? Has it really been feigning ignorance the whole time of like, but that can never happen here? Or is there something deeper going on? And this is again, the current state that we're in is like this is somebody taking advantage of all of those weaknesses in the system to really unravel what we have. And yeah, I mean, getting tear gassed somewhere simply for protesting. I was at the the really big protest that happened that was led by it was like 35 different unions based in Oregon. And there were, I don't know, even know how many thousands of us who showed up. Labor union, right? Labor unions leading this protest, marching down from the park to the ice facility. And we were just passing by the facility. Like there was not an additional stop there to rally and create a rally in front of that building. And I was part of the protest. I was in the first half of the protest, and so we didn't get tear gassed, but the second half did. And it was I saw the photos and the videos from that, and it was like, I have never seen and I've been to the ICE facility before for protests. They've used tear gas before. They've shot pepper balls, rubber bullets, all of that. But the amount of tear gas that I saw in these photos from that day, I was like, I have never seen that before. These massive clouds, people trying to run away from these clouds of tear gas. And I had never seen that amount, and it was just like, yeah, what is happening? And also kind of to me this signal of, wow, this number of people showing up really scared them for
Mm.
them to use that amount of chemical weapon on us.
Right.
And so it's like this two-sided thing where you're just like, "What the hell is happening? How is that what's happening when we're simply exercising our rights to free speech, to protest, to speak out?" And then also, well, shit, yeah, we the people do have power actually if we show up and we continue to show up and we come and us as the majority, who we know are the majority, we can scare them. You know? Um, and then tying that to also, like and everybody's trying to live their lives
Yeah.
amidst all of this, trying to go to school and do their homework, trying to go to work and pay their bills, trying to keep their community alive and feeding their own souls with their community connection, and it's like yeah. Anyway, it's a lot, but I do see whenever when you were talking about the types of situations that were playing out in the Philippines and have been playing out in the Philippines, I can't help but be like, whoa, this is starting to be mirrored in the United
Mm.
States right now. And talking about that US imperialism almost feeling like it's coming back home in a weird way, right? It's like,
Yeah.
you know
Yeah, like, we as, people in the US are living within the belly of the beast, which is the beast
Yeah.
being US imperialism, um, and it's like the failure of the current system right now is just so apparent, like, with Trump's new, um the passing of like what 1.5 trillion billion dollars going to fund ICE instead of,
Mhm. Mhm.
social services that we actually need as people,
Mhm.
because the cost of living right now in the US is so high. Even in Portland, Oregon, where like people can barely get by with groceries just for like $300 a month that is
Yeah.
given to low income people who need food stamps,
Yeah.
or like healthcare, like it's expensive to see a doctor. There's even more like wait times because a number of nurses and healthcare workers are going on strike because they're facing like
Mhm.
really terrible conditions in their workplaces. And these are hospitals where like people who need extreme like urgent care or are dying or are giving birth
Mhm.
like need genuine and adequate care for their health. So yeah, I mean, I agree. It does feel very heightened at this moment, especially here in Portland. Um, and I mean, even in the Philippines now, like I said, like Marcos Jr. is the son of Ferdinand Marcos Sr., who is
Mhm.
known to be a dictator in the Philippines in Philippine history. And I related to, what you mentioned about my trip to the Philippines last year,
Mhm.
um, there are like programs where through my organization, Anakbayan, we actually get to send people or send members of Anakbayan back to the Philippines to actually integrate, live with, and actually organize alongside other communities who are fighting for their rights as people. And so, it's like already the rhetoric about youth and students trying to organize for their communities is now, particularly in the Philippines, um, being frowned upon because now the Philippine government is saying, like, oh, these youth are brainwashed because they're
Mm.
integrating with these communities who are actually terrorists. Like, for example, there's this one youth organizer named Chantal who went to the Philippines earlier this year to integrate with indigenous communities on the island of Mindoro. And what had happened on January 1st was the armed forces of the Philippines began to bomb the island. Um, and, these
Do you
are,
know why? Like, what was their reasoning for it, and, like, what is the community's idea of why that happened?
yeah, well, the island Mindoro is a home to indigenous people. The Abra de Ilog people, and they, of course, are very rich in natural resources, just as a tiny island in the archipelago, the
Mm.
Philippines.
Mhm.
And they've actually been very active in fighting for their rights to their land because there are multinational corporations who are trying to come in and do illegal mining
Mhm.
and push out the indigenous communities there. So already there is a strong people's movement growing on the island of Mindoro, and already there has been incidents of like extreme violence on the communities where a number of community members have been killed, have been harassed, have been kidnapped. So there are actually fact finding missions led by human rights organizations in the Philippines where they're trying to go to actually investigate what's really happening in the Philippines and not truly believe what the Philippine government has to say about what's happening on
Mhm.
Mindoro.
Mhm.
So these bombings, it's very similar to what's happening in Palestine right now. Like these are civilians with lives like that are very much tied to their land, and yet the
Mhm.
Philippine government is bombing them for the sake of, uh, these are terrorist organizations. It's a very dangerous island, and it's bogus. It's so bogus.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Chantel, in particular, she went to integrate with these communities in Mandoro, and she was caught in the middle of the bombings, where she was missing actually for about a week now, about a week earlier in January. Um, but basically, the armed forces of the Philippines claim that they found her, that she was in custody with them, that she was getting the health care she needed after what happened. But um, on January 31st, we got news that she was released from the
Shit.
government. It was
Okay.
actually
Yeah.
flown out of the Philippines. So, for us, we are like very relieved that she
Yeah.
uh, is no longer in the hands of the Philippine government right now. She's no longer in a military camp being held for reasons, like she was a person of interest
Mm.
or she was involved with terrorist organizations. Why is even a Filipino American in Mindoro at this time? Um, so, yeah, for us, we're very relieved that she is out of that. But
Yeah.
there is now like the Philippine government is labeling youth activists as being terror groomed by organizations like the ones that I've integrated with in the Philippines and that Chantel has
Yeah.
integrated with. And they say that we are being brainwashed as youth and students by these organizations because we are, going against the government. We want something different than what's happening. And we actually see the right to actually fight for our land and our democratic rights as people. So right now, like we're actually in a very heightened time, specifically as Anakbayan, because we are going to say like that is those are all blatant lies that we are being terror
Yeah.
groomed or brainwashed. That the youth actually have the ability to think critically about our world, and that we actually have a right to go home to our homeland of the Philippines,
Yeah.
and um, we also are able to change the Philippines because if the armed forces of the Philippines, the Philippine government is also so scared, much like the ICE
Mhm.
facility here in Portland. Um, they are if they are so scared, then it makes sense why they are spreading these lies
Yeah.
because they see the power of the people coming together. Um, so it's heartbreaking. I mean, I just watched a film last night called "Gaza Is Our Home." It's a film documentary
Mhm.
by a Palestinian whose family all is in Palestine, but over 27 of his family members have been murdered by the
Mm.
Israeli state.
Yeah.
And, I can't help but think about like, the community in Mindoro hearing planes, fly over their homeland and thinking, oh my God, is there going to be a bomb?
Yeah.
Um, the elders, the children, the mothers, the working people. And the unit of the armed forces of the Philippines that found Chantel in the early January is the same unit that bombed the
Yeah.
island of Mindoro.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, yeah, I think these blatant lies again just show the fear that the Philippine state has on the the power of the people's movement.
I mean, yeah, as you were saying, it's just like people who are just trying to live their lives and survive really with what they have and how they can and be able to utilize available natural resources in the way that is appropriate for them to help them instead of it being extracted by whatever other powerful entities, right? Yeah, I mean, this is all we're talking about through this whole conversation of like US US imperialism and having their hands in the Philippines. Um how this movement in the Philippines was really started by young activists too and students. And this seems to be a lot of where at least people get started in the United States in this work is as students and then, as they grow older, continuing the work. Um, but this, you said, you mentioned earlier before we started recording, basically just these updates with youth activists in the Philippines that you kind of wanted to share and how these are all connected to the United States too. Is there more that you want to talk about there? Or have we already kind of like covered it a bit?
Mm. Um, I guess what I wanted to share in particular is the trip that I went on last year was from July until
Yeah.
August. And the group that I was with got to integrate with organizations like Kabataan Party List, which is an alliance of different youth and students in Laguna or in Cavite. Oh, no, Southern Tagalog. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah,
Um,
great.
so we got to integrate with a lot of other youth organizations there, and actually got to see them do relief work during the floods that were happening in the late
Mhm.
summer in the Philippines. But also something that was really highlighted for me was we got to integrate with the different rural communities. In particular, we got to go to Cavite and integrate with the people of Lupang Ramos. And Lupang Ramos is a very significant area in the Philippines because it's 372 hectares of land, which is like a hectare is kind of equivalent to a football field.
Mhm.
So this massive, beautiful, luscious piece of land in southern Tagalog, in Cavite, where there are so many people living in different areas of Lupang Ramos, of course, but they get their livelihood from tilling the land,
Mhm.
from planting, harvesting corn, rice, and other products on their land. But they face like a lot of military presence, and even like the military is actively watching the community that I integrated with
Mm.
because of the people's organizing, um,
Mhm.
and them exercising the right to defend their land, in particular to not allow foreign multinational corporations to come in and buy and
Yeah.
displace their communities.
Yeah.
So, I reflect a lot about how, like, it is my right as a young Filipino, to go home because we are robbed of knowing our homeland and knowing our culture because of US imperialism and because of the rotten system in the Philippines. But it, I'll just say that it's so aggravating that the current governments are labeling people like me as terrorists or
Yeah.
brainwashed, or I don't know anything because I was born in the US. I wasn't born in the
Mhm.
Philippines.
Mhm.
Um, because it's through trips like the one that I did last year that really opened my eyes that the Philippines is worth fighting for because the
Mhm.
people are worth fighting for. And in this current climate where there's a lot of fear instilled on young people for wanting to do something better, um, I'll just say it's just even more important for us to come together and organize because it's very clear that the systems in place do not serve us as young people. And for me, I actually firmly believe that the Philippines can be freed, much like the people of Palestine can be freed too within our
Mhm.
lifetime, because if it's not us who saves us, who actually liberates us from these oppressive systems, then who else would it be?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I always have felt like it's such a defeatist view to be like, "Well, I can't do anything about that." Or like,
yeah.
what difference is it gonna make? Like, this is not gonna be," and I've heard that before, specifically in relation to Palestine,
Hmm.
is that so many people are like, "This has already been going on for so long, like, this is not gonna happen in our lifetime," and I'm like, "It wasn't that long ago in the context of things when
Yeah.
this really started," and, like, it was just because, again, the people in power made a decision for the people who were actually impacted, right? Like,
Hmm.
and they had no say, and this is the same thing that's played out in the Philippines and in so many other places around the world too, and it's like, yeah, that it feels so, almost lazy, right? To be like, "Well, can't that's just the way it
Oh.
is." Shrug, like, "I can't do anything," and it's like, well, maybe we are not, like, the wealthiest people, maybe we are not politicians, maybe we are not ever aspiring to be, but there are things that we can do that have impact and have power, and this is how movements are made, and this is how they're created, and this is how change is made. It's, you know, the civil rights movement didn't start in the government
No.
in the United
Mm-mm.
States, and if we waited for that, it would have never have happened. And it's the same thing with when you look at any revolutionary movement around the world. It's you can't just wait for the government to change its mind.
No, no.
And there is power in doing something and
Mm,
saying something and organizing people, right? And I think that's another thing that people are just like, well, I don't know how to organize people. And it's like maybe you don't need to know how to. You need to know how to get organized. You need to know how to get involved with things that already exist. And I maybe this is something that you can even share is like how do you all organize others? How do you create these relationships too between the Philippines, between
mm,
um, these communities that people don't just like have access to or
mm.
have contact with? I know I spent several years doing a lot of traveling, and I know so many people who went to the Philippines just to like travel and be tourists, and like
Fair.
yeah, and I've heard it's an absolutely beautiful place. I've seen photos, absolutely beautiful place, but it's like those people are not gaining the intel or the information or access to the folks who you all have these relationships with. It's something that you have to intentionally build.
Mhm.
And yeah, I'm curious how do you guys do that? How do you start those relationships or maintain that and like build it out too here within the United States of getting more people to get organized?
Yeah, it's a great question. Um, I think, for us as a youth organization, the impacts of the 2020 pandemic is still carried over in, the way the school systems are. Particularly, like a lot of students here in like the universities that we frequent are very
Mhm.
used to like taking online classes, not really going out and being social,
Mm.
and relying on like, social media or, phone texting as a way to communicate. But so yeah, just all to say like the impacts of the pandemic are still here in the way that youth interact with each other and the world. But really for us, like how we organize is actually go to the communities where there are Filipinos and just really getting to know them and actually like what is their life story, but also what are the issues that they are facing. Like, um, there are Anakbayan chapters that are actually integrated into different high schools where
Mm.
in Oregon here, they actually got to help the Filipino students at that high school launch their own Filipino student organization.
Awesome.
The very first one in that high school ever. So, and then there are also like young organizers who go into workplaces like different hospitals where they get to meet different migrant workers, different Filipino migrant workers, and actually organize alongside them to form a uh, a mass organization that fights for the rights and welfare of the workers at that hospital in the food
Mhm.
department. So, our strategies of organizing look very different based on where we're based at. But for us as Anakbayan Portland, we are very much integrated into the universities in town, but we also do not separate ourselves from the different migrant struggles happening in our area.
Mhm.
So, there's campaigns like Justice for Tita Maria, who is a
Yeah.
Filipino caregiver who was experiencing wage theft. And we mobilized alongside her during her press conference, during her confrontation in front of her employer to demand, wages back. We were involved with the Fight Like Jose campaign, where we actually mobilized in front of the Mexican consulate saying that Jose
Mhm.
should be brought home and not be
Mhm.
detained. So yeah, even though we are, for us as a chapter centered around campuses, we do not separate ourselves from the larger community. Because
Yeah.
again, it's up to the youth to go with the workers and the basic masses of society in order to make genuine change.
Yeah. And I love too the campaign, with Jose, where it's like, it's not just about Filipino nationals, and
Yeah.
really this understanding of, like, these issues are interconnected and impact each other, because if a win is a win kind of a thing. A win is a win for many, and so when those different actions and activations are supported by many different organizations, it just gives it more power, and it really is this opportunity to understand how all of us really are interconnected,
Mhm.
and this issue that may seem like, "Oh, but that's not our focus." It's still something that matters, right? Because at the end of the day, there are overlapping n what's the word that I'm looking for? Like, overlapping issues, but, um, desired outcomes,
Mm.
right? And it really is, at the end of the day, just connected to human rights
Mhm.
for all. And, yeah, so I just wanted to touch on that too, and recognizing that you all are also collaborating with so many other community organizations really across the Northwest, like, not just in Portland, but I see how these, like, cross organizational just collaborations happen, and you all kind of coming together to attack different issues, again, that are all connected under the same umbrella.
Mhm.
And that's something that I really, yeah, I just really love and admire. And it's like these are the things that we need to keep breathing life into,
Mhm.
because as we said earlier, it's like this is where change is made. And building community can be on this very significant level of organizing across organizations and bringing all of these people together, connecting internationally as well. And it can quite literally be in your own neighborhood
Mm.
and reaching out to folks on your campus, right?
Mhm.
Or just building those connections. And it seems like the work that you do with Anakbayan is it encompasses all of those levels of organization.
Yeah. I think in particular at this current time, it's especially important to build international people solidarity. Um, so yeah, again, like fighting not just for Filipino migrants, but migrants from all around the world who are affected by the system of forced migration, um,
Mhm.
and the rotten system that, does not allow for our people to actually live a life that is fulfilling.
Yeah.
Um, So yeah, I think it is very important, especially for young people to realize like international solidarity is really like where we can connect all of our issues, but also all of our solutions together in a time where US imperialism is trying its tentacles in all different places in the world. Um,
Mhm.
and I think something I'll say to that too is for us in the National Democratic Movement, we understand, of course, like the need and necessity of building international solidarity, but also for us, when we win our revolution, when we win national sovereignty and genuine democracy over the Philippines, this is a contribution to the rest of the world who are
Mhm.
also nations who are also fighting for their own liberation. Because
Yeah.
once, there's a weak grasp of the enemy on the Philippines, then that weakens the entire, the
Yeah.
beast of
Yeah.
US imperialism. Um, So yeah, definitely echo what you just said.
Yeah. I also wanted to ask, we've mentioned a couple of times your trip to the Philippines last year. That was your second trip to the Philippines, is that correct?
Was yeah, second.
Yeah. I wanna even just know on a personal level what what that trip felt like, but also what your first trip to the Philippines was like and what that meant for you. And I
Oh,
think from other Filipinos who I've met, like, there is this it seems to be fairly common that it is, like, difficult to go, like, back to the homeland and, like, visit family. In my community of Mexican Americans, like, it seems more common, I guess, that
mm,
folks go back to Mexico to visit family and friends and, you know, where parents or grandparents were from, at least for folks who have, citizenship in the United States, right? It's easier, and I don't know if that's just, like, a distance thing or what, but I mean, you were a full-on adult the first time that you went to the Philippines, and so I'm
yes.
curious. Yeah, I would love if you could share a little bit about both of those experiences.
Yeah, I would love to. Yeah, the first time I went was in 2024 with my mom,
Mm,
and basically I was there for my very first time to set my feet on Philippine soil and breathe the air of our homeland. But I was there mainly to, visit my family in this very, very small village in the province of Pangasinan. And I just got to be in the village that my mom grew up in and actually meet all of my aunties and uncles and all of my
mm.
cousins and to see my grandma, who I haven't seen in many years. So, I
Do
mean,
any of your mom's siblings, did any of them end up leaving the Philippines too, or is she still the only one who left?
yeah, there are two siblings on my mom's side that are also in Hawaii. They actually live in
Okay,
Kona together.
okay.
But still, a majority of our family
Yeah.
is back home. So, um, I guess I'll just say that trip just reinforced my love for my people, not just my family, of course. Like, I really showed my love and gave my love and was loved
Mhm,
in return during that trip.
mhm.
But also just for all the people that I didn't get to meet on that first trip, also, like the love for this land that really nurtures and provides for us, but um, faces droughts and disasters like
Mhm.
typhoons every year where the land can get so dry because of the environmental destruction happening there.
Yeah.
But it was very fulfilling. It was very, very fulfilling. I don't think I've laughed that much in my entire
No.
life. There were points where I lost my voice because I kept scream laughing so much with my cousins. um, yeah, and there's still a language barrier with me and my family, but we
Sure.
we made it work. Very simple Filipino, very simple English.
Yeah.
But I think that already
Can
set.
I ask
Uh-huh.
go ahead,
Nope.
finish your thought, yeah.
Go.
I was gonna ask, it had your mom been back to the Philippines? And if so, like, has she had the opportunity to go back several times to visit?
Yes. Yes, she
Okay.
has. It was just my first time going with her.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Um, but yeah, I think that trip in particular really framed the way understood my homeland, our homeland. Um,
Mhm.
so then, that was vacation mode. That was vacation
Sure.
Jennifer.
Yeah.
But then,
Yeah.
2025 comes and I actually got to go on an exposure trip, is what we call them, with
Okay.
Anakbayan. And I will just say that my love was deepened in 2024 with my family, but I think my love was even fire like ignited even more with going to integrate with the different communities that we did.
Mhm.
Mostly because, these are people who are living under very, very poor conditions, but still find ways to laugh, to play basketball, to make jokes and play games and eat candy and, enjoy each other's company, and also struggle towards a better Philippines that we all want. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I'll again, like the land that I saw, like the land that we were on, so luscious, but also like so dry. Like the soil
Mm,
was like
mhm.
hard rock soil.
Yeah.
And the different farming methods that the communities we were with are very backwards. Like it's hand to hand tools. There is one carabao for an entire village that, is the animal that helps them like make the
Mhm,
troughs
mhm.
and, helps till the land. Um, so for me that like ignited even more like not just anger, but agitation that like this home our homeland is worth fighting for. Um, so yeah, I think like both trips and hopefully like with more trips that I get to go on, um, I think it just brings to life like, yeah, we really need to organize and build a people's movement to fight for this homeland. Um, and there are people here in the US that we need to organize in order to see that this is their homeland too.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I know that those trips, yeah, they are like so deeply personal and those but there's nothing like it. And I'm so glad that you've had the opportunity to have these like two very different yet similar experiences of yeah, just like re-engaging with your homeland. I wanted to ask too how your farm work is connected with this. And I want to say I have asked Da to be on the podcast too.
Yay!
So she will, I hope, have the opportunity to like discuss this in more detail. But I want to know from your personal experience and perspective of working on the farm, on Seedlings Farm with and alongside Da, like how this is connected to your community building work, right?
Mm,
And this work within the Filipino community.
mm. Man, I loved it's uh well, before I started farming, I knew nothing about it. Like literally zip nothing. Like I like to
Yeah.
get dirty. I like
Yeah.
plants, but I literally knew nothing. So a lot of my time with the Precious Seedlings was um just me getting the practice of what it's like to cultivate land um
Mhm.
for production, but also like for consumption with myself. Even like I got to bring home different vegetables, but also for our community too. Um, so it really humbled me. Like being
Mhm.
a farmer with the really humbled me in the way like farming really tests your body, your strength,
Yeah.
and even your patience too. Like you can spend so much time planting all these seeds and like letting them germinate and then, transferring them to like actual soil in the ground, but then they don't even pop up or
Mhm.
they die because a
Mhm.
mole got to them just like the next day. So really like farming really taught me patience and taught me humbleness for what the land can give you and what it will provide for us. And I think for me, it's related to our work in the Philippines because, on Precious Seedlings, we have access to all of these different tools and even like a miniature tractor. Um,
Hmm.
and there's irrigation, there's running water that is so
Mhm.
accessible to
Mhm.
us. But in the Philippines, like where a majority of Filipinos survive based on the land, like there is no irrigation systems in a lot of farming communities. and they faced a lot of droughts and typhoons that damage a lot, almost if not all, a lot of their crops, um,
Mhm.
which affects the way that they're able to feed their families and pay their
Mhm.
land rent to their landlords. So, yes, like the farming here that I got to experience in Portland has humbled me a lot, but I think it like ties me even more to like the need to fight for the farmers and the peasants in the Philippines who don't get the irrigation, the tools,
Mhm.
the food on their tables that they deserve because of the rotten system. So it's, yes, it's connection, but it's also like understanding like the Filipino people, the peasants in the countryside actually have the right to defend themselves. um, I'm sure like you'll hear about it also through DUN, other organizers for the Philippine movement, but there is an active armed revolution happening in the Philippines. And
Mm.
it is so just because of the conditions that they face, um, and how the people in power will not give up their power voluntarily. So, in Anakbayan, we talk a lot about the New People's Army and the justness for armed struggle in the Philippines because these farmers are facing such brutal conditions and, you know, get murdered on site because of them like fighting back against the exploitative conditions of their landlords. So, something that I also want to share here in this podcast, my love also for the peasants who are defending their land, and who are actually taking up arms to wage a revolution for national democracy in the Philippines.
Mhm.
Because, again, to counter like the terror grooming, the brainwashing, like Filipinos have the right to defend themselves by any
Of
means
course, yeah.
necessary.
Thank you for sharing so much. It's I have wanted to have this conversation with you for a while because, even though I've seen you several times, many times since moving to Portland, we're always kind of like doing a thing, at some sort of event or like just, yeah, doing some sort of work toward these end goals. And we haven't had the opportunity to really like sit down and have a conversation and for me to get a more holistic view of what you do with Anakbayan and like
Yeah.
everything else.
Yeah.
And so I'm so glad that we've had the opportunity to connect here and here in Portland and here on this platform to have this conversation. And um thank you for like bringing me in also, and like introducing me to the people and the organizations and showing me this very vibrant and energized community in Portland of such incredible people. And so, yeah, I'm very grateful to you for those, and I'm thankful for you taking the time today to share. And yeah, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Yeah. I also very much admire your work that you do too with this podcast, with sharing a lot of other people's stories and migrants' stories too. Um, and yeah, I can't wait for you to get even more involved and find your home in the communities here in Portland.
Thank you. Yeah. And thank you for listening. These are our other stories. My name is Madeline Longoria Garcia. You can stream this podcast on any platform that you listen to podcasts. Have a wonderful day.